Hi friends, welcome to Law Chat with Girija. My name is Girija Patel. I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I am a podcaster, I am an educator, I am a businesswoman, I am an entrepreneur, and I'm a lawyer. I truly believe in the power of mentorship through storytelling, and that's what Law Chat is all about. So whether you are in 6 months or 10 years of business experience, we can all learn from each other's experiences because we face the same challenges and we have the victories and we have mistakes that we're all making. So why not lean into them and know that we're going to be fine and we're going to be okay and we're going to be inspired. And of course, this is Law Chat with Girija, so we will be talking about some law at some point during the conversation. And if you love what you hear today, which I know you will, then subscribe to Law Chat with Girija and share the love. So grab your coffee, sparkling water, or wine, and let's dive in to the next inspiring mentorship session. Hi friends, welcome to Law Chat with Girija. Technology is here to stay. And as a business owner, if you haven't embraced it yet, you're a little bit behind. But even when you're embracing it, it's a hindrance to sometimes our growth. I know from personal experience that it's an encumbrance to me. It actually debilitates me when I can't do it or when I'm depending on someone else. Well, our guest today, Dawn Richardson, is not only a tech savvy guru, but she also combines her software engineer days with what she's doing today and gives you and teaches you the most amazing ways to embrace technology in your business, but also to use it and leverage it in your business. So you're not just kind of doing the small things, but really getting the tricks of the trade. Dawn is a software engineer turned into a photographer and now a tech guru and coach, and she integrates the best of both worlds for all of us. If you're not following her, you need to because she literally gives the best tips out there, and it's actually fun also when you're watching her. She's a new mom to her second child, and I'm just so grateful for her to be with us today because I know it's so busy, and carving this time out for me is so sweet. I met you at Creative at Heart last year, and it was just so wonderful to be in your same group with you, chat with you. So welcome to Law Chat, Dawn. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Yeah, I know. I mean, we were just talking right before we started, and I'm like, I'm just always like, I mean, I have 2 kids, but I also know the struggles. Being a new mom every single time, you're like, it doesn't get easier, it's exponentially harder.
Right. And as soon as you figure it out, it changes, right? So it's like, it's just a never ending cycle of figuring out new things. It's a very humbling experience.
Absolutely. And what worked for one may not necessarily work for the other one. Even like boiling it down to diapers and bottles. I mean, like sometimes a child will just not like it, what you used to do. So anywho's, there's a lot of fluidness in that situation.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
So Dawn, again, we were talking about school and software engineering, and you did MIS undergrad, right?
Yeah, I did.
You were like one of the 2 women in the program in your graduating class.
Yes. Isn't that crazy? Yes. I mean, the program was fairly small. Management information systems is a business degree. So we're in the business school, we're with all the accountants and the finance majors. And, we just kind of had this like little chunk of us 45 MIS students.
Yeah.
But, I loved it. And it was a great experience. I got my business acumen at the same time, but I also was preparing to be a software developer. And that's exactly what I did straight out of undergrad at Texas Tech.
It's truly a wonderful combination of business and engineering and understanding computer. When I was at UT Business School, I remember, we would have like the computer lab and you knew where the MIS people were. And I would always look at them and be like, oh my goodness, how are you doing this? This is so much work. And then of course, the typical, oh, they're so nerdy, whatever. Today I'm like, oh my God, I want to be part of that group. I need to be that nerd right now because it is so vital. Technology is so vital. If you are not tech savvy in today's world, you are going to be behind. And literally, it's not even exaggeration. Like you are prehistoric already. And so how did you go from being, doing MIS to the next phase of your life, which is a photographer. How long were you working in the software engineering industry?
Yeah. So my IT career actually started while I was an undergrad. I was at the University of Arizona and I was pre-med. So like that was my plan my whole life was I wanted to be a doctor. And then I got to college and I was like, oh gosh, I don't want to be a doctor. Like that did not take very long. But I always had a liking towards tech. Like my grandpa would build computers and I was just really interested in that. And so I was like, I don't know, like I was paying my way through school. I was like, I'm going to go apply for a job at Apple. And I got the job.
Amazing.
And so that's how I worked my way through a good chunk of my undergrad before I transferred. But I fell in love with the fact that like technology could really make an impact on people's lives. And I did technical support there. I also did training and workshops. And like, keep in mind, this is like 11 years ago. It was a long time ago. It was like when the very first iPad released, like that's when I was at Apple.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
It was also 11 years ago. I feel like,
yeah, it was 2008, 2009. Yeah.
No way. Oh my gosh. I've gone through like a dozen iPads since then.
Oh, me too. Oh, me too. I also worked there when it was the iPhone 4 was released. And like, I don't know if you had one at the time, but like you held the phone wrong, like you lost service. Like you learned so much about customer service when that is happening in your life. So it was just like a really great experience overall. I loved working at Apple, but working at Apple really inspired me like, hey, you know what? I can kind of do this for real. Mm-hmm. And so I switched to MIS. I transferred to Texas Tech. That's a long story, but got my degree in information systems and got hired by USAA straight out of school. So I went to be a software developer there in San Antonio. And that's where I am now. I met my husband at USAA and I did that for 4 years. So I was working in the corporate world for 4 years. About halfway through there, I had some big girl money at this point, and my friend's like, hey, check out this Groupon for a camera. And I'm like, oh, I've always wanted one of those. The things, the ones that have the lenses that come off. I'm like, oh, this is fancy. So I bought it and learned how to use it. It's a piece of machinery. Like it's technical. It's super technical. And I fell in love with like, oh, like these settings create this result. So got into that. And then friends started asking me to take pictures. And then I started charging like $25 for my pictures, and then, it came back and I was like, oh, I can be my own boss. Like, and my business school stuff started to come back to the surface. So that's how Downloads the Studio started. That started in 2015. And we are on our last 3 weddings this year. So I am slowly phasing out.
I just heard last 3 weddings. Like that's like, what does that mean?
I know. So we've been shooting for 7 years now. And I want to be home on the weekends. We were doing like 30 weddings a year, and that's a lot of Saturdays.
Yeah.
And I loved being a business owner and being a photographer, but it's time to come home and be home with my babies. So we started phasing out in 2020, and in Texas, we book out about 2 years in advance. So my last few weddings are this year. But in that process of becoming a creative, I fell in love with the industry. Like I know just as you have, like the creatives are just so amazing. They're so like their entrepreneurial spirit, but it's also pretty and it's fun. And I just love this industry. And I learned my favorite parts of business, like the back end of the business, the automations, the processes were the parts of the business that most people don't like in the creative industry. So I was like, you know what? Why don't I start helping people?
Yeah.
And then Tech Savvy was born. And here we are fully phasing out of photography to do Tech Savvy and help other creatives figure out what they need in their business so they can focus on what they love. Because I know they don't love the computer. So helping them find the right tools, the right systems. And that was a really long story of my full circle.
I hate to interrupt this awesome conversation, but I have to stop and talk with you about the number one thing I'm asked about by entrepreneurs: contracts. They're vital to any business relationship and to protect your business. But I also know that entrepreneurs, especially when you're starting up, money is tight. But I would never want you to compromise on a strong legal foundation. So enter yourcontractbuddy.com, a website created by me with contract templates created and drafted by me and fellow industry partners. They're ready to use and easy to plug in immediately. And they are not restricted to any specific state. So yourcontractbuddy.com is sponsoring this episode, and you and your listener can get 10% off right now with code LAWCHAT. Yes, you heard me right. 10% off right now with code LAWCHAT. And now back to our awesome conversation. I'm so glad you shared that with us because, when somebody hears I was a software engineer, I worked at Apple, then I worked at this other amazing company. And then, then I just, started doing photography. Like that just doesn't connect. You're just like, like what happened between there? What was the instigator? What was the turning point? And for you, it was just happenstance. You just happened to pick up a camera. So while you were doing photography, were you also working as a software engineer at that point? Or when did that break happen?
So for 2 years, I did both. So as a software developer for 4 years, 2 of those years I did both. And then after 2 years, I fully phased into the wedding photography world.
How was that change in that phase? Because I think a lot of us sometimes struggle with the fact that we have studied and interned and gotten apprenticeship in areas that we have gone to school for. And then all of a sudden you're doing a 180 and you're going, you're shifting all your focus into a business that is absolutely not related, degree. So how did you make that shift? And how did you know this is the right decision to make?
Yeah. So that's a really good question. I've always held on to the fact that nothing's permanent. And if I wanted to go back, IT is not going anywhere. That was kind of always my thing is okay, I'm going to take this risk. If it doesn't work, I can always come back. I can always figure out something else, but I am never going to be able to try this unless I actually go for it. I'm just going to always wonder, what if, right? And it's hard leaving corporate America. There's the term, the golden handcuffs, they have some really great benefits. And where I was, it's that I loved the company and the amenities and everything. And it was just really hard to have that, okay, I'm going to really, jump out there. There's also a lot of practical things that we had to do. We had to make sure financially we were in an okay place, and we were in the middle of our debt-free journey at the time. So that was a little intimidating as well. And, when I was doing both, I would wake up at 3:30 in the morning and I would work until 7. And then I would go to work and come home and, figure things out. But that hustle allowed me to really be sure that this was the right thing. Cause I was excited to wake up at 3:30 in the morning to get this done. And again, if I didn't do it, I would always regret it. So it was just the right decision, but it did take a while to get there. And we wanted to be educated in our process to get there. We didn't want to just kind of do something and really set ourselves up for failure.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You really honed on to something, which I also said that to myself as well. And I feel like a lot of people actually say this to themselves. And the thing is where you are maybe professionally, you have been licensed to do something, or you are trained to do something with your degrees and whatnot. And then you want to explore something that is absolutely unrelated. But the idea to know that you always have XYZ and it's not going anywhere. And truly it's not going anywhere. It's with you as long as if you have a license and you need to keep, whatever you need to do to keep it up going and up to date, but it's not going anywhere. And life is like you said, if you don't experience it, then the what ifs exist. And so taking that step is scary, but you didn't take it without knowledge. You took an educated risk.
Yes, very calculated.
Yeah, it was calculated, educated because you read about it. And I think that's important. Yes, sometimes we see the shiny objects and we're like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then, and sometimes it's good to have the parallel lives. It's hard. It's a lot of work. Yeah. And so when you were doing that and, you were shifting over, what were some challenges that you faced and how did you overcome them?
Yeah. I mean, there's so much fear, and I think we all experience that as we transition. My goal when we started to make the transition and talk about actually going full time was I never wanted to be in a position where I had to say yes to things that I didn't want to do. Yes to clients that weren't a good fit. Yes to all these extra jobs. Yes to double header weddings. Like that was like the foundation of our calculated decision, right? Like if this other job gave me the flexibility to say no, like I didn't need that income from the studio to survive because I had this other job. So it's just like, putting yourself out there and being willing to say no and like really refining your business. I feel like there's so many people out there that teach you this is how you do things and this is the tools that you use. And that's really intimidating. And it's really hard to admit that those things aren't right for you and like having to figure it out on your own. Because instead of being like, oh, this is great for me, like you're like, oh, like so-and-so said that this is how I had to do things and it doesn't fit for me, but am I going to fail because of that? And that was actually, something that really transpired into Tech Savvy Creative was my goal was to never be a billboard for a certain tool. The tools that I use are not the tools for everybody else. And my goal with Tech Savvy was to help people figure out what the right ones were for them, not which ones I use. And here's my affiliate link, like, especially in our world, the affiliate world is just so intimidating. You don't know half the time if it's an affiliate link or not. And like, some people,
which I was going
to say, like, you probably have a lot to say about this. Yes. And so it's just, that was like one thing I struggled with personally was if I had this mentor, if I don't do it this way, am I going to offend them or, but what if it's not right? And really just kind of diving in and figuring it out. And I would say one of the biggest challenges for anybody that is doing a secondary business, like for me, like I had the studio for 5 years before I started Tech Savvy Creative. You are constantly comparing your two businesses. Right. So like the studio has been in business for, 7 years now. Why don't I have as many followers on Tech Savvy that I do on the studio? Like you constantly comparing yourself, but you're discrediting the journey that it took to get you there on one, and that was something that was really hard for me when I started Tech Savvy was like, oh my gosh, I'm literally starting from scratch, but I feel like I should be here when it took 7 years to get there in the other business.
It's so funny you say that because generally people compare themselves to other people and then, you have no idea what it took them to do to get to that level. Like that you don't understand their journey because you don't have that idea. Here, you knew the journey, you experienced the journey, you were part of the journey. And you're still comparing yourself, like your businesses. And I think that really is important to highlight because it just shows the human nature of us to do that, regardless of what we know and don't know. And again, putting ourselves to this level, a standard that we've created for ourselves. But it's good to know also that it took you 7 years to get there. And with Tech Savvy, when did you start Tech Savvy?
January 2020, right before the world flipped upside down.
Yeah. And so, I mean, we all need to take into consideration 2 years of our lives that just kind of leaped out and came back in. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it's really true.
Some of us did things, yes, but it doesn't mean like anything. It just means that, I don't know. It was funny. Anyways, when I miss out on 2020 sometimes. I forget that.
Well, and it was also just like a weird time. Like I started and I was all excited. And then all of a sudden I had to reschedule 15 weddings. And like, so my life went from like, oh, I have this game plan to start this new business to like, there's no time for this business because I'm shooting 3 weddings a weekend. Like, it was just like crazy. Yeah. So even that, I was like out the gate, I felt like I failed, like I had this plan, like, I know what I'm doing. Like, this is I'm going back to tech. Like, I'm literally like, and the creative industry is all on Apple products. So like, like it's something that I was super familiar with. And it was just really hard to like kind of get past that, but
so how did you get past it, or how are you getting past it?
Slowly, and it's really being willing to adjust and flex. I think we all kind of go into things with a game plan that like, this is what I want to do, and this is how I'm going to do it. And even like with tools and how like creatives like choose something, like they like put all this time and effort and it's not working for them, but they don't want to change it because it's not, they already spent and they invested.
Yeah.
You know what? Like it's a sunk cost no matter what, whether it's time or it's money, like, but it's not going to do any good for you to stay with it. Like, it's not going to help you in the future. So like tech savvy has kind of gone through this evolution of like, oh, I'm going to do systems, and like, oh, I'm learning that the creatives actually really need help choosing the right computer for them and going back into that hardware, and just being willing to adjust and experiment has been the only way that I've been able to survive this whole process. And because what I thought tech savvy was going to be from day one is not what it is now. And it's evolving as my audience and the people I interact with help me understand what they're struggling with, and being okay with that evolution as well.
Yeah. I love that. It's the flexibility and
Yes.
showing yourself some grace along the way.
Yeah. And it applies to all of them.
Yeah.
You know? Like in my photography business, it was, I'm working with clients that maybe don't click with me. Like, how can I change that? You know, and it's starting to say no to clients that, you know, that aren't the best fit for you, and adjusting your branding to be very, you know, specific to a certain type of couple and all of these things. So those adjustments can take place regardless of what business you're running.
Absolutely. And you only find out as you go through it.
Yeah.
One thing I really like what you said earlier is the fact that you wanted to have the ability to say no to certain work, like the ability, you didn't want to have that situation where you felt handicapped and you had to say yes to everything because of the situation you were in. And I think that's a great aspiration, as well as a metric, or, you know, like a little compass of what is coming in and what is going out. And it kind of goes back to intentionality, and how even you're talking about branding and being very specific about the message you're sending across and who you're attracting to that message. And it's, again, very fluid. If you start with a business plan, even if you don't, like, even if you just start with ideas that are sitting on a piece of paper, that's like a living document. It's going to keep changing.
Yes.
And it's okay. It's okay.
Yes. It's okay. Ride the wave.
Yeah. It's okay to have like 10 different failures, and on the 11th one, you're like, this is it. This is amazing. And a lot of big companies have started that way, their services or products.
Yeah. And you have to have that gut check, you know, like we talked about, like, you know, am I resenting this job that I created for myself? And that was the thing that like really spurred the creation of Tech Savvy and phasing out of weddings entirely. I found myself dreading the weddings, and I love my clients, but I was just burnt out, and I started to resent the work that I had. I was more in love with it, like signing the contract and like the whole process of the business. And then like future me 2 years later was like, why did I do this to myself?
Yeah.
So as soon as I started, you know, not looking forward to the weddings, I knew it was time to go. And that's how it started. And I also had to recognize that like I created this wonderful thing, but when I created this wonderful thing, I didn't have kids, you know, I wasn't even married yet. Like now life is different, and, you know, we got to, you know, roll with the punches. And, you know, maybe down the line, I'll get back into it. Probably not, but you know, I had my time, and I'm so thankful for my time in the wedding industry, because I wouldn't be able to do what I do at Tech Savvy unless I lived it for so long as a wedding photographer.
Oh my gosh. So on point, because as a photographer, you were not necessarily doing a lot of tech stuff, for lack of a better way of explaining it. And so for probably 5 years, you were away from the tech world, right?
Yeah. With the exception of like, you know, business automations and things in my own processes. That was like my favorite part. I'm like, ooh, I'm going to automate this email sequence, and I'm going to like connect these things together. But it's not like, you know, like I'm buying computers, but I'm not helping other people choose the right computer for them.
Yeah. And I like that, you know, you shared that with us, because I also took time off. I took 6 years off, actually. And the thing in any professional world, whether it doesn't matter, any professional world, that's a lot of time. Even 5 years is a long time. And kind of going back to the whole concept of, well, I'm not married to this job, but my degree is not going anywhere. That is something I worked hard for, and I'm going to keep it sustained regardless of whatever I'm doing. And so even though you took time off, your degree is still with you. And so funny enough, it kind of led you back to doing something that's related to software engineering, is related to technology, related to IT, but in a way that now fits you well. And so, and it's a beautiful journey, because you have used all the experience that you have gained in that amount of time. And even in the absence of actual IT work, you know, per se, that you can actually take it and now apply it to your new business. It was meant to be where you were meant to be in that spot. And now, it's coming to a full circle. And I felt that same way with myself because same thing, like I would never have known the creative industry unless I had immersed myself into it in the 6 years that I was not working as a lawyer, but I was doing all these other things. And it gave me insight that other lawyers may not have now. And that's something I needed. I didn't even know.
Yeah. Because you couldn't serve your clients unless you experienced it, like
you don't understand. There's
no,
especially like with the way marketing is happening now, with all the technology that is out there. If you don't experience it, like you just don't get it, and stuff. And so it's really cool. And even for you, you did the same thing. And now your 2020 came and here's tech savvy creative. And how did you birth that? What was the behind the scenes that was happening during that time?
Ooh, I love this. So I had been speaking at like small events and stuff as Donna Elizabeth Studios. I was helping people with their systems and tools. And I wanted to get a little bit more serious about my education and applying to conferences and things like that. But what I was really struggling with was trying to attract wedding couples and also attract the creative entrepreneur in the same brand. And I was really struggling with is my newsletter tech focused or is my newsletter wedding focused? Or like when I'm posting on Instagram, am I talking to a bride or a groom, or am I talking to a creative? Like I was really struggling with trying to find that balance without it feeling like a checkerboard on my Instagram. Like I didn't want it to be like every other. So that's kind of when I started like, okay, maybe it'd be a good idea to actually separate these two and create a business that is entirely focused on, tech and the creative industry, and then let the studio be the studio so I can focus on serving those clients well. And it was a lot of trial and error. Like I try to keep them together because everybody's like, try to keep them together, it's good. I don't, personal and business Instagram. And I don't, I don't know. I was trying to like keep it all together and streamlined, and it just wasn't working. So it was time to break it out. And I love it so much that I broke those two out, because like over here, I'm wearing my tech savvy creative hat. When I'm at a wedding, I'm wearing my wedding photographer hat, and I don't have to try to explain to wedding clients why, I'm talking about backups on their photos and stuff like that. So that's how that came to be. And it started from there. And I started like, trying to think of a name. And I remember I was literally sitting at Show It United by the pool on my computer. And I was like, oh, like tech savvy creative. I like that. And I searched for the domain, I searched for the Instagram, and it was all available. And I'm like, it's meant to be. Like, here it is. Like, here it's mine. Buy it. It really was. And so that's how that transition happened. And I'm so glad I did that, because now I can really market myself to who I need to market to and not worry about, not serving the other one well.
Yeah. It's very interesting that you got advice to keep them together. Now, was there some type of connection between the two? Were you trying to educate other photographers, or were you just educating creatives in general?
At the time, it was mostly just photographers, but the creative industry is very heavily photography. There's a lot of photographers out there. But then I realized like there was this huge chunk of creatives and wedding professionals that were not being reached. And like, and even with tech savvy, I do some photography specific things. Like a wedding planner does not care about how to back up, 100 terabytes of photos, but photographers do. So like there's some things that I do specifically for photographers just because of my experience, but in general, I try to keep it very broad and reach that audience that maybe doesn't have as much educational content. So that was part of the switch.
Yeah. And again, you went with your gut. Like at the end of the day, you get a lot of advice, but you really have to just pause for a second, be silent, and hear what your gut is telling you to do.
Yeah, exactly.
And so
it's still scary, starting an Instagram account with 0 followers is very intimidating.
Well, I'm sure that's not the situation anymore. And, I've seen you teach and talk. And I think it's really cool to hear you because it's easy to understand also. You're not, your Insta stories and your reels and all, they're easy to understand. And then you're like, okay, I get this. I can do this. And I've saved so many of them myself. And so it's so helpful, And so for the listeners out there who are entrepreneurs, whether you're in the creative industry or a startup or some other type of industry, what are some of your like top tech tips for, I don't know, streamlining and automating and trying to, I guess, like streamline your processes so you can get ready for scaling?
Yes. So number one, and I will stand on the soapbox until my very last days, is always have a plan B. Okay. My computer is just as likely to fail as your computer. Technology fails, hard drives go out, toddlers pull devices off of countertops. You have to have a plan, a backup in place. So when those things do happen, because they are going to happen, it's just a small speed bump in your life, not a complete catastrophe. That is so important. And that's going to really change your relationship with any kind of technology, is having a plan B, having that backup. Like the iMac that I'm looking at right now just came back from the Apple store. They had to replace the entire motherboard in it. And like, I'm tech savvy creative. Like, my husband makes fun of me because he's like, your stuff breaks all the time. And I'm like, I know, I think it's like a curse. Like I teach people how to do this.
More than anything.
Exactly. But it's nothing I can control. I can't control hardware. But it was really easy for me to pick up this iMac. I mean, not really, it's heavy, but like pick up this iMac, take it to the Apple store, let them do whatever they needed to. And I come back and I can just instantly transfer my stuff back on. And it wasn't a catastrophe. It was just kind of annoying that I didn't have my iMac for a week. Mm-hmm. So setting yourself up for success and having those backup plans is so vital from day one. It is never too late, and don't learn the hard way. So many creatives and entrepreneurs understand that concept because they lost something. Like, don't wait until you lost something to do that.
So what would be some ways to do the backup plan B plans?
Yeah. So if we're talking about files, like you can have a local backup. And when I say local backup, that means you're backing up to another hard drive on your desk. Okay. So you're plugging in. If you're on a Mac, it's super easy because it's automatic. You just like turn on your time machine and it'll automatically back up all of your files every hour, which is amazing. You just kind of forget about it. But there's also solutions out there like Backblaze. It's a cloud backup that is just automatically uploading to a cloud. And if you ever need to access those files again, you 100% can. I really love Backblaze. I had my toddler pull down an 8 terabyte hard drive off of my desk about a year ago. And it shattered. Like it literally came apart. It was in pieces. And with Backblaze, it was backed up to Backblaze. They actually mailed me a physical hard drive with all of my files on it. Mm-hmm. And I could transfer it to my own and then send it back for a full refund. And I didn't pay anything, or I just kept the hard drive. So like, that's really cool. And like one day FedEx overnighted me my hard drive and I had it there. Again, annoying that my toddler did that, but I did not lose a year's worth of wedding photography files, so it was really, really important. But it also, having a plan B can apply to when you're out and about. Like maybe you're at a expo or something and you have a table and you're, presenting. Maybe you have an iPad for people to sign in on. Well, guess what? What happens when you can't connect to the Wi-Fi, right? Mm-hmm. So bring that clipboard and that piece of paper just in case, like have a plan. I do my wedding timelines on my watch, okay, for when I'm at weddings. But guess what? Sometimes the watch dies. So I need to have a paper backup. Just always start to think about those little things. When you set yourself up for success and have that plan B, typically your plan A works just fine. It's always when you don't have that plan B that things start to fall apart.
Paper backup is everything. And I don't know what you feel about this, but I feel like there should be at least 2 different cloud backups also, and a proper like zip drive type of a backup or whatever you call it these days. But yeah, I mean, it's the worst when you lose photographs. Oh my gosh, photographs, guys, your own personal photographs. I do feel that sometimes I get overwhelmed with all this information. Then trying to find it is what overwhelms me the most.
Yes. But it's there, right?
Yeah.
It's there if you need it.
So backup is essential. Then what else would you suggest?
So a mistake that I see a lot of creative entrepreneurs in particular make is that they don't feel like they're ready for something. Like they don't feel like they're ready for a client management system, or they don't feel like they're ready for a website or maybe some basic automations. And I think that's completely false. The sooner that you start with those things, the more you can grow with it, and helps you like make decisions in your business, because these tools are going to kind of put you at a crossroads of like, okay, how am I going to do this? And it forces you to kind of think through your process a little bit. So, from day one, I would suggest, look into some of these tools. It might not be the tool you stick with forever, but look into it and start with it and treat your business like a business, even if you're just starting. And I know you have a ton to say about that. Like get your contracts in order, have an invoicing process, use a client management system, even basic email templates and automations. The sooner that you take your business seriously, the sooner your clients will take you seriously. Mm-hmm. And I just know so many people that kind of have that limbo of like, am I really a professional photographer, or am I just doing this as a hobby? Start with that system. It's going to be a little intimidating, but there's a lot of resources out there for you, and you will never regret, growing with a tool on your side. And if you need to change it later, then you change it later. Maybe you outgrow tools. I've outgrown a lot of tools, but it doesn't hurt to start with one.
Great advice. And it kind of all goes to budgeting for your business. And so if you can budget all of that into your business expenses for the year, then it's not that hard of a decision, because you have that money there for it. And again, when you start doing these processes in your business, you yourself view yourself as a legitimate business owner and somebody that you can trust and take seriously. And so that comes across then to the person that you're talking to across the table.
Yeah, exactly. And I promise you, it's so much easier to do your QuickBooks as you go rather than like going back a whole year and doing it in one swoop. We all get that, right?
It's the worst. It's like, it's the worst. But yeah, absolutely. Been there, done that. Might still be doing it sometimes.
Same. Yeah, same. I took 3 months off for maternity leave. I was like, oh
yeah, it's still what happens. But yeah, if you just can, things are expensive. They're not necessarily always cheap, but they're also not exorbitantly expensive. And you can definitely find stuff that is within your budget and the season that your business is in. Yes. And so take that plunge, even if it's basic. And a lot of times, there's a lot of email systems out there too that are helpful. And then that can also incorporate pretty stuff into it if you're not requiring too much. So there's a lot of things out there. And of course, study and see which one works best for you.
Yes, exactly.
I agree. Are there any other tips that you would want to give to us?
When you were saying that, one thing that popped into my head was that also applies for your devices themselves, right? Like for a lot of creatives, we don't require a ton of computing power, but there are subsets of creatives like photographers and videographers. Like you need some hefty computer equipment to do this well.
Yeah.
And you are going to lose money on the time that it takes to get your computer functioning half the time, just because it's so dang slow. Yeah. So like you said, like budget for it, buy the right computer the first time, not like a year later, like if, you have to use these Adobe products to function, make sure you are meeting the minimum requirements for the software to function well. I have so many people that are like, oh, well, I can save $200 here. I'm like, yeah, but then your stuff isn't going to work and you're going to replace it in 6 months, so you're losing money. If you can invest in the right computer, it will last you a longer amount of time, and it's going to save you so much time because you're not ripping your hair out because it's not working as it's expected. So that's really important. And that's what I do a lot now with Tech Savvy, is helping entrepreneurs find the right equipment for them, so they aren't having to replace something every year. They're replacing it every 5 years instead.
Oh, wow. And so tell me, what does Tech Savvy do? Like, what do you do in Tech Savvy Creative, and how are you serving your clients?
Yeah. So this is adjusting as time goes and as babies are born. So at first, Tech Savvy was a lot more one-on-one coaching type things. We also did a lot of audits. That's like a really ugly word for like basically sitting down with a creative and walking through their process and asking them questions and showing them where they can make things better. So that's something that we did. Now, as I'm moving on to this new phase with baby number 2, it's a lot more, I'm providing products to help creatives do things on their own time. And that's something it's really hard for somebody to block off a whole day, to do something or to set up a system or to walk through things. So we're creating like some courses and we're creating ebooks that people can download. And we're also moving into some more virtual options that are a little smaller. So like we're in the next few weeks, we're going to be introducing Voxer coaching. So basically you get access to me for a certain amount of time via a walkie-talkie app called Voxer. And that allows you to like work on the thing that you're working on and ask me questions as you go, rather than having to like have all the questions and like get the answers in a 90-minute window.
Yeah, that's great.
So like, yeah, right. And it's great too, because Voxer's all voice. It's not video. So like I could be feeding the baby and like, I can still like serve these clients and help them walk through these processes. So that's what we're doing now. It's moving into that one-on-one and a little bit more of a virtual, flexible option, but also really ramping up our shop and creating products that creatives can dive into when the time is right for them.
That's awesome. Congratulations on all of these shifts that you're having and diversification. And, where can we find all of this stuff and how can people connect with you then?
Yeah. So you can find me at techsavvycreative.com, and you can also find me at techsavvycreative on Instagram. And I'm also on TikTok, but yeah, that's a mess of a lot of things over there, but I'm Tech Savvy Creative there. But yeah, you can find me in any of those places. I'm probably most active though on Instagram.
Okay, awesome. And then a couple of questions that I always ask my guests is, one, what is your anchor? What holds you steady when things are a little crazy?
Yeah, I love that question. It's my babies for sure. My mom was a single mom and she just worked her butt off all the time. And it was never something that like I resented. I was just always inspired by her. Right. And I want to be an inspiration to my girls. And I want them to know, like, you can find that balance of like, having a family and focusing on family, but also like pursuing something that you're really passionate about. Even if it's scary, even if it means that you're leaving the corporate world, even if it means you're shifting. And I want to be that example for my girls. So that's always my anchor when I am, that's my why. Like when I want to rip my hair out because something's not working, which happens all the time. I remember why I'm doing it. And if it doesn't align to why I'm doing it, then it's not the right thing to do.
That's beautiful. I really like that. And do you have any books that you could suggest to us?
Oh, so I've lately been a little into some fiction books. I'm a huge Audible listener. Like,
yeah,
I love to do laundry and dishes because I get to listen to my books when I do it. The Harry Potter series is my all-time favorite. I go through all 7 books probably twice a year.
Wow.
But I just finished Ready Player One and Ready Player Two. It is a lot of fun. So if you're looking for a fun fiction book, it's great. But nonfiction business stuff, I would say the book that really rocked my world was The Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey. Okay. We implemented that, 8 years ago before I even started the business. We're debt-free and we've ran both of these businesses debt-free from day one. And that has really given me that flexibility to say no. And that has been a big game changer. So nice. Huge fan of those principles. And I would recommend it to anybody that is starting a business or is just, personal finance too.
Yeah. Okay. That is awesome. Definitely. Everything will be in the show notes for everyone to collect and contact and link into. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for all of your tips and loved hearing about the transitions that you had and how you came out of them and succeeded. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining Law Chat with Girija. I just love these kind of conversations that are motivating, inspiring, but truthful, raw, and honest about all of the challenges, all of the victories, all of the triumphs, picking ourselves back up again. I just can't think of a better way to get mentorship but Law Chat with Girija. If this was helpful to you or this was inspiring to you, please share the love. You can give this video a thumbs up. You can subscribe to this channel. You can also share this with your community by taking a screenshot and posting it on your social media and tagging GBP Law. When you do that, a lot more people will be able to see this video that not only benefited you, but also can benefit them as well. So let's share that love and let's share that inspiration. And if you want more information about what I do and other resources, go check out gbplaw.com or yourcontractbuddy.com. And I look forward to seeing you next time.